Okay, so we discussed about creating an Azure storage. We discussed about, the detail of it. We discussed about the Azure Blob storage, its use cases, its protocol, its why it is called as Blob, and how we will be able to use it in a better way. In the sense that the I have given you the example of, say, Flipkart, Facebook, right? All these, or maybe any multimedia, say Instagram, etc. So wherever we need a kind of, we don't need, we don't know exactly what type of data which is coming in. Sometime the photographs, sometime the videos, sometime the text, sometime something else. So all different type of data can come when such type of use case where we don't know what type of data will come and get stored. There we use the blob because it has, it has the capability to store anything and everything. So, and basically it is used when we do, more often it is used when we do the backup, the recovery, the DR, in those all, in all those cases, when we are having streaming images, when we are having, in case if we wanted to store any file for, with distributed access, we can use this thing, but it has the storing up to 8 TB of the data for a virtual machine. So the capacity, if we talk about, it has the 8 TB of data for a virtual machine. So you can store that much data. Okay. Now, okay. And so you can understand that you can upload a massive amount of data in the blob, and uh, blob can contain gigabytes of binary data streaming for a scientific instrument, an encrypted message for another application, or data in the custom format for any app you are developing. Now, then we discussed about the type of storage. The type of storage, when we discussed at a broader level, we can say primary storage and the premium storage and general purpose storage. Now we discussed about a term called Azure Data Lake, which is being used for data analytic purposes, particularly for big data solution. So in case if we will dig down deeper in that area, we will discuss it more, but not right now. Okay. Now, because we are currently covering the fundamentals or the breadth of, I would say, the breadth of Azure, not in the depth of it. Now, when we discuss, once we will start discussing each topic in the depth, then we will discuss every topic in further more detail. Now, we then next we discussed about the Azure file storage. The Azure file storage, we discussed about the use case of it. Particularly, it is used when we do a lift and shift. Why? Because the application is having a particular okay, no problem. So when application is having uh, when you define an application, it has a certain path, and if you in case if that application is being developed, configured in your on-premise system, you wanted to migrate it as it is to the cloud, definitely you need to you don't want to change your application, because it will be very cumbersome for you to change. So in such cases, you would like to keep your configuration, your path, your structure as it is, and for that reason you will be using the Azure file, because it mimic exactly in the same way as your drives, for example, C drive, D drive, whatever be the drive. So it mimic the exact same form. So therefore, and you can use it in the either in the form of Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, any operating system. With the help of any operating system, you can access it. any number of any number of Azure virtual machine or roles can mount and access the file storage shared simultaneously. That is the beauty of it. So if you are having multiple virtual machines, you will be able to access the same shared drive uh, with any role. Wherever you give the permission, you will be able to access it. So you can also access it as a shared drive. uh, then we discussed about the one thing that separates out the Azure file from a normal corporate file share is that you can access the file from anywhere in the world. So normally you can't access a shared drive from anywhere in the world, but Azure file you can access it from anywhere in the world just by using a URL that point to the file. You can also use shared access signature, which is SAS. So shared access signature tokens to allow access to a private asset for a specific amount of time. So in case if you want, suppose there is an application, there is a user to whom you wanted to give access for a particular period of time, not for all the time. So for a specific amount of time, you can give the shared access signature token, and by that way you will be able to grant him the access, and then he will be able to use it. Now next is we discussed different use cases, and we also discussed that in case if you want to replace or supplement on-premise file server, uh, that you can use, and you can access it using network um, uh, you know using network access devices. Okay, so using such devices, you will be able to access it. Then we discussed about the SMB protocol. The protocol which is used for Blob was HTTPS for file. The network file system. Because it is being accessed through the network file system. So therefore, you need to use it using the SMB protocol. Point number one, and point number two is the NAS. So using NAS and SMB, you will be able to access it. Okay. So a number of Azure virtual machine, can access it, and you can store the the like the diagnostic data or application data sharing data, etc. All all those things, like you will be able to access it. We discussed about the configuration file. You will be able to store the configuration file. You will be able to store the diagnostic data, right? You will be able to discuss. Then then we discussed about queue storage. So for queue storage, we discussed that it can have the 64 KB in the size. The messages which are up to 64 KB in size, such type of messages you can store in this, and you can it can handle the millions of messages. What is the capacity? The capacity is unlike your Blob was 8 TB, your file was like up to disk, right? uh, Here in this case, again, it is up to your storage, the limit of your storage account. That is your capacity. So that much data you will be able to join in here. Okay. And it has the service, the storage queue. So storage queue, it build up, and you can process the data asynchronously, and you will be able to fetch the data, and you will be able to process it whenever there is a need, right? So we discussed about the use cases of it. Then we discussed, just for a differentiating purpose, so that you will not confused between the service bus queue and the storage queue, I have also explained you the service bus queue. Although the service bus queue is not part of your the fundamental course, but yes, just to avoid that confusion, we discussed that it is not a service bus queue. It is the storage queue. Okay. Then next we discussed about, but we will discuss, later about the service bus queue in case if we, in case if our, in case if we need to do that. Okay. Then we discussed about, then the next thing which we need to do is, the Azure table storage. Okay. So Azure, so far, and before that we discussed, various other things. In case if you have any question, anything, you will be able to ask me now. Whatever we discussed so far, in that, in case if you have any question, please ask me. So, okay. In case if you don't have question, please write no. So today we have total 10 participants. We have in our batch 16 participants, so 6 are missing. 6 or maybe, not sure, maybe 7. Okay. Thank you so much. So the people, those who have, those who mentioned, no. So there is no question. So let us continue our discussion for Azure table storage. So now, Azure table storage. So mainly the Azure table storage is a service that store. So let us first talk about the Azure table storage. Should be in this Azure table storage. So Azure table storage is a service that stores non-relational structured data, also known as structured NoSQL data in the cloud, providing a key attribute store with a schema-less design. So few things. First of all, it is NoSQL data. It contains the non-relational NoSQL data. Okay. Non-relational NoSQL data. Second is it stores the data in a schema-less design. Next, it stores, okay, so it is easy to adapt your data as the need of your application evolve. Access to table storage data is fact, in fact, it is in the cost effective manner for many type of application, and it is typically lower in cost than traditional SQL for similar volume of data. So that is the beauty of it. It has the lower in cost with the traditional SQL data with a similar volume of data. So in case if you have this, the volume of the data is same, but it gives you a cost effective database solution. It gives you typically lower in cost than traditional SQL or no, traditional, okay, traditional databases. Okay, you can use the table storage for to store flexible data sets like user data for web application, address books, device information. Just a minute. Okay, Venkata joined now. Okay, so you can use the table data for storage. To store flexible data sets like user data for web application, address books, device information, or other type of data, including the metadata of your services. Okay, so basically, table storage can store flexible data sets like any user data for your web application, address books, device information, and other type of metadata. Okay, You can store any number of entries in the table, and store amount and store account and storage account may contain any number of tables up to the capacity limit of the storage account. So again, the capacity here, the capacity again is the capacity is capacity if we talk about. So like we discussed about the Azure queue storage, right? We have the capacity up to storage account. In the same way, this is also for the storage, the capacity is up to storage account. So whatever be the limit of the storage account, that limit, so the same limit can apply for table storage, just like the queue storage. Okay. Then we have, okay. So what is the use case of it? So it can, it can keep any application data, any website data. Suppose you are developing a website, you can keep your your user entries, their purchase entries. You can keep your their their address book. You can keep the device information. You can keep any type of data which normally you use for the wherever the tables are, wherever you wanted to store the data in the tabular manner, there you will be able to use this. Okay. And you can have as many number of tables as you want. So there is no such limit, but yes, it is in the tabular structure. When we discussed about the file storage is was not in the tabular structure. The queue storage was also not in the tabular structure. The blob is anyways not, it is not at all the tabular format. But in this case, Azure table storage is for the tabular structure. In case if you wanted to keep your data, or for any application scenario where you need to keep your data in the tabular manner, there you need, you can use the Azure table storage. Now, there are several applications. For example, you can use Azure Cosmos DB. Now, Azure Cosmos DB provides the table API for applications that are written in the Azure table storage and that need premium capabilities like, like the global distribution, dedicated throughput worldwide. So in case if you wanted to, your concern is about the throughput of the data, you will be able to use this. Your concern is about, when we discussed about the blob storage, the concern is not throughput, because the people knows that in case if you are using, say, Facebook, Google, Instagram, okay, the people, those who are uploading the file, those who are downloading the downloading it, you don't care about the throughput, because that is not application, that is not time critical. Okay. So you are enjoying there, you are just uploading your file. So and so if even if it is the speed is okay, that is fine for you. But in case if something is very critical, for example, your business scenarios, right? You wanted to access your customer data, you wanted to access your patient data, whatever. So at that time, uh, your throughput is important. So your time is important. You need to keep your data in the structured way, so that it will not waste the time in the searching of the data, right? So in all those cases, you use your table storage. Now, so it has the single digit, millisecond latency. That is the speed of it. So it has the single digit millisecond latency at the, at the 99%, availability time, and guaranteed high availability, automatic secondary indexing, so that you will not keep searching. So one is the primary indexing, which is anyways there, but it has a secondary indexing, just in case if the primary will not help, you will have the secondary indexing, so that you will be able to access the data in a very fast manner. So here the throughput is the key. So throughput is the key, and there are different, several different business scenarios where you can use it. And turnaround time, throughput. Now, next is about the disk storage. Okay, what is disk storage and what is the use of it? So Azure disk storage. So Azure disk storage is basically used for to keep the disk. For example, you are creating a VM, and now with VM, of course, because you are keeping an operating system, you are keeping the data also there. So you definitely need a kind of disk associated with it. So in case if you wanted to keep a disk associated with it, you will need disk storage. Okay. So disk storage provide disk for Azure virtual machines. Application and other services can access and use these disks as needed, similar to how they are using in the on-premise scenario. Disk storage allow data to be persistently stored and accessed from an attached virtual hard disk. So it is your attached virtual hard disk. That is how you will be able to use your disk storage. And Azure Managed Disk is a virtual hard disk. The small notation of the virtual hard disk is, okay, earlier we have been using the word HDD for hard disk drive. Now when we use the virtual hard disk, we use the term VHD, that is virtual hard disk. You can think of it like a physical disk in an on-premise server, but virtualized. Azure managed disks are stored as page blob, which are random IO storage object in Azure. So these are, the example of the, page blob. Page blob is, Azure managed disk. Okay, where you can use, which can be used for random IO storage object. So in case if your need is for random IO storage, then you will be using random IO storage. Then you will be using what? Page blob. And when you are using page blob, you will be able to use, that is your, Azure disk storage. Now we call a managed disk. Why we call it as a managed disk? Because it is an abstraction over page blob container and Azure storage account with managed disk. All you have to do is to provision the disk and Azure take care of the rest. So you don't need to worry about it, where the disk will be, how the disk will be accessed, how, we need to do the fragmentation. Earlier, if you remember, as we all were facing a typical challenge when we were using, when we were dealing with the HDD. So in case if you are having, earlier we were having the very small size, hard disk. And even in that case, there was a tool called fragmentation tool. So we have been doing a continuous fragmenting, defragmenting. We were supposed to split the disk in different drives and all those things. Here, particularly, and in case if there are bad sectors, again we need to replace the disk, and so so different type of problems I mean, we we can face in case and we have been facing whenever we use the disk in our data centers, whenever we use our disk in our laptops, our PCs, we have been but now in case of the Azure VHD, there is no headache of us. Everything will be managed by everything will be managed by Microsoft. So disks come in many different size and performance levels. For example, you have the solid state drive, which is SSD, to traditional spinning hard disk drive, HDD, and with varying performance tiers. You can use the standard SSD and HDD disk for less critical workload. Premium SSD disk for mission critical, you know, for mission critical production application. Okay, so there you can use this thing. So either you can use HDD in case if you're in case the cost is your concern. In case the cost is not your concern, but your speed is concerned, your the latency is your concern. Your concern is the use of it. Okay, then you can use even the other stuff, which is the SDD. Just a minute. Okay. Now, so for mission critical application, you can use SDD. For normal use, you can use HDD. For mission critical workload. Okay. Now, and you can also use the ultra disk in case I mean, which is the next generation form of SDD for data intensive workloads such as the SAP HANA, right? So in case if you are, I mean, you can use the ultra disk for SAP HANA type of workload, which is for SAP HANA type of workload. Okay. So there, I mean, which are data intensive workload. So I mean, there are two types of it. One is the mission critical and one is the data intensive. So in case if your need is the data intensive workload, you can use the ultra disk. In case if your need is say mission critical application, you can use STD. Otherwise, you can use, if the cost is the concern, you will be able to use HDD. Azure has consistently delivered enterprise grade durability for infrastructure as a service. So this is IES disk. It is not PAS disk. It is IES disk. Whereas, so this is, if we talk about this, it is IES disk. Okay. But in case if we were using say Blob storage, that was, what was that? It was IES or PAS? For blob storage, what is that? It is IES or PAS? Yes, it is a PAS storage. I mean, why? Because um, we it is it was a platform as a service, right? So whenever we are using the platform as a service, we can use such type of data. But while configuring the virtual the VM, when we put a drive there, so this is a kind of example of IES disk. Okay, sorry, IES infrastructure. Why? Because the VM itself is IES, right? Now, next is, okay, next is, so by now we have discussed all about, all different type of storage: blob, file, queue, table, and disk. Okay, I mean, we have discussed all different type of storage, but now we will discuss about, okay, now we will discuss about next is what? Understanding the blob access tiers. So blob has different access tiers. Okay. Oops. Okay. What went wrong? These are some problems with the. My God. Okay. Whatever we wrote has gone. Okay. That's really bad. And it's not coming back. Yeah, I tried undo, but I just undo that one line which I draw here. But while doing that undo, this has also gone, and now I'm trying undo and redo and everything, and it is not coming up. So that's the beauty of this paint application. So I tried this thing, but it's not happening somehow. Let me again try. So it has gone. This is gone. This is gone. This is gone. But if I'm just trying to undo, that stuff is not coming. Not sure why. Okay. So we don't care about that because actually we know that yes, whatever we have covered, right? Okay. So Azure, just for our memory. So we discussed about Azure table storage. We discussed about Azure disk storage. We discussed about several use cases of both of them. We discussed about the capacity of these things. We discussed what we discussed about as an example. We discussed about Cosmos DB somewhat, and where we are using it in and all. Okay. Now next is we are discussing about this understanding blob access tiers. Okay. So this is about the access tier, blob access tier. Now when we are okay, so for blob access tier, data is okay. As we discussed, that data stored in the cloud can grow at an exponential exponential rate. It can because you think of an application, for example, your Facebook or your Instagram or your any other application, your Amazon, your Flipkart, right? So if you are having any such store, your data, and particularly in case of your social media, right? For example, your Twitter, etc. Your data can grow at an exponential pace. For example, if you have elections, if something happens in the country, if something some festival, right? Your people start tweeting or start putting the data like anything, and you can see that within an hour period of time, even hour is more, even few minutes, you can see thousands and thousands of messages, thousands and thousands of pictures. You know, people can upload. On particularly on social media accounts. So you don't know, and your data grows like anything, and at a kind of bust sometime, and your data grows higher. So if you wanted to deal with such type of situation, of course, because you don't know the nature of the data, you don't know the type of the data, So how you will be able to deal with that? So the solution would be your Blob. So you can organize your data based on the frequency of access, the planned retention period. The data can be different based on how it is generated, processed, and accessed over its lifetime. Right? So data can be different based on how it is generated, how it is processed, and accessed over its lifetime. For example, if people are sending tweet, right? Once you send a tweet, will you? I mean, maybe you will be able to go back to that tweet to see that, okay, what I mean, how many people liked that and all that. But after a few days, or maybe even, I mean, you don't care. I mean, whatever you tweet, whatever tweet you send, you sent. Now you don't care, and you don't even go back and try to retrieve it, right? Why will you retrieve it? Because you are sending so many tweets in a day, or maybe in a month, in a year. Who will care that? Okay, few months ago, I sent that tweet, and now I need to access it. It is important for me. Nobody care in such type of things, right? But yes, what you care is whatever you are sending right now. Maybe for a day or two, you may track it. Okay, what is the response of the people like that? Now, if you talk about the use case of the, say, Facebook, you are uploading your pictures, your data, you are sending, similar to WhatsApp, right? You are sending, people keep exchanging and uploading their data, keep forwarding the messages from here and there. Whatever comes to you, you send it to somebody else. You don't care, right? And but particularly in case of Facebook, maybe you are interested to see your photographs of your wedding, or of a particular event. Maybe you wanted to access it, and you may be interested to see that. But otherwise, you keep sending messages or things or selfies or whatever. You don't care it, right? So what is your frequency of access? What is your planned retention period? What type of data, how the data is generated? How the data is processed and accessed? These are some of the parameters which you need to take care of it for its lifetime, to understand that, okay, what is your pattern of it, right? So data is stored in the cloud can grow at an exponential rate. That is one. And also the organization, the planned retention period, and all those things. You need to take care of when you are trying to understand the access tier of it. So there are three type of access tier. One is the hot access tier, one is the cool, and one is the archive access tier. So the hot access tier, you will use when you wanted to optimize for storing data that is accessed frequently. For example, images of your website. So images of your website are accessed frequently. In case if that is the need, then you will use the hot access tier, because if you want to access something at a relatively rapid rate, you will use hot access tier. If you will use cool access tier, when there is a need of infrequent access of storage, and data is stored for at least 30 days. For example, invoice of a customer, right? For example, now archive storage, when you don't even or when you rarely access your data, say at least in last 180 days, with a flexible latency required for a long period of time, for a long backup. For example, your you know maybe your, say, your photographs, your etc., right? So in that case, you will use archive access to storage, because definitely you need to keep them, but you wanted to keep them for a longer period of time. Okay, not so frequently you wanted to access it. Okay, so in that case, you can use archive access tier, or you can even use the cool access tier depending on your need. Okay, now the following so there are different type of consideration which you which you use when you use the hot access tier or cool access tier. But both hot access tier and cool access tier can be set at the account level. The archive access tier isn't available at the account level. So that is the main thing. So for particularly for hot and cool access tier, you access it at the account level. So you are creating a storage account and you are using the hot access and the cool access tier at the account level. However, the archive access is not for the account level. Okay, so that is one difference. Okay, next is the hot, cool, and archive tiers can be set for the blob level during upload or after upload. Okay, now the data in the cool access tier can tolerate slightly lower availability, but still require high durability, retrieval latency, and the throughput characteristics similar to the hot data. Why? Because so hot data, you need immediate access. You want an access continuous. Okay, so you are using hot access tier. But for cool access tier, your durability is important so that you can access your data whenever you want. So, and it should not happen that it go vanish, right? So you want it at a high durability. Retrieval latency, okay, that could be moderate, and your throughput characteristics. Okay, so high durability, retrieval latency, and throughput characteristics. These are the parameters which you wanted to, according to which you wanted to decide. Okay, now for so your cool data is like at a slightly lower availability, then higher access cost. Then hot access tier, because again there is some cost difference. So hot access tier require the higher cost. Cool access tier require little lower cost, but it has other characteristics more or less similar. Okay, but your available, in case if you want your availability is your concern, keep your data in the hot access tier. In the cool access tier, it may be little slightly lesser. Okay. Now the archive access tier, your data can go offline and offer the lowest storage cost, but also the highest cost to rehydrate and access data. But in case if you wanted to rehydrate and access the data, it require a cost. But for storing purpose, it don't require much cost. Okay. So that is the beauty of your access tier. So you have the hot access tier, the cool access tier, and your archive access tier. Okay. So any question so far? Okay. Thanks, Arpita. Thank you, Parvesh. So others are not attentive, huh? A little in the sleep mode. Okay. Thank you, Era. Okay. Thank you so much. Now we wanted to go for hot access tier, not necessarily. Again, it is based on the use case. So Swagata, hot access tier we used when the availability is the concern, right? So always which type of storage we use or which type of application we use, always. So the reason why I'm telling you the use case that and the characteristics, because as a user you wanted to decide which way you wanted to go or what is your use case. That is where you need to pay attention. So there is no as such standard that okay, you will be using one thing only. You can use anything, right? But it depends on your use case. Exactly, yes. So based on the need you will use. What is the on multi-cloud scenario? Okay, so multi-cloud, see, every cloud is giving you a different variety or different flavor. We are talking about Azure right now. So Azure storage you can use with, of course, with Azure when your center is in the Azure. Okay, but in the multi-cloud environment, again, it depends that how your how your how your architecture is. Accordingly, you can decide that okay, whether the storage whether you will use Azure storage or whether you will use some other storage. Okay, but since Azure provide a very big marketplace, and I think in the second or third lecture I explained you about the Azure marketplace. So Azure marketplace has a very big size. We discussed about the 8,000 products or services. So, and which are growing even. So you can think of, that okay, whatever you wanted to use, you will be able to use with Azure. So, and that's the reason why Azure is growing at a fast pace. So the only two competitor, one is AWS and one is Azure. There is no one else in the market, right, which has um, that much speed or that much competition. Initially, only AWS were there. Azure was not even there, but now only two, right? Why? Because the speed of the Azure, the market capture of the Azure is like tremendous, right? And that's the reason why Azure is having like a database and analytics services. Okay. Now we will discuss about your database and analytics services. But in the interest of time, I think we should be using it. We should be discussing it next time. We already, it's near to 12:15. Okay. So I think we should not be starting a chapter, um, uh, you know, now. But yes, okay. So going forward, what we will use is, okay, so I think in case if, I think we can wind up the session in case if you don't have any question and discuss about analytics services. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.